Happy Tuesday, Notre Dame fans. Mike Singer from blueandgold.com with our beat writer, Tyler Horka. Uh, we're in the very thick of the offseason. February, one of the slower months of the calendar year in the world of college football, but still plenty of things to talk about. Notre Dame's staff is still not officially completed. Not even close, to be honest with you guys, and we'll touch on that. Still roster moves, but I would say, Tyler, the bigger news it's kind of circulated here in the past few days. Delon McCullough, Notre Dame's expected running backs coach. Um, tell us what kind of happened here that's transpired in the past 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, so obviously at first was reported, I think maybe a week ago, or maybe we're just over that week time frame that he would be coming to Notre Dame from Indiana. And of course, those are just reports. Blueandgold.com confirmed those reports. So it looked like he was done deal. McCullough's coming to Notre Dame. He's making the trek up the interstate and, from central Indiana up to northern Indiana. But then as these things go later in the week, it was reported. Obviously, the New York Giants of the National Football League just hired a new head coach, and McCullough was targeted by that staff to be the Giants running backs coach. And McCullough spent some time in the NFL, won a Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs. So obviously, his heart isn't 100% in college football. He probably would entertain at least the idea of going back to the NFL. And that's what this was. So that was probably Friday of last week. But then kind of shut down pretty quickly over the weekend. And it looks like McCullough is actually in South Bend now. Hasn't been announced by Notre Dame itself, but as we've seen with some of these other coaching hires, that takes a little bit of time. But the bottom line is McCullough is all but Notre Dame's running backs coach, pretty much 99% official. And that's who guys like Chris Tyree and Logan Diggs and the rest of that running back room are going to play for in 2022.
Yeah, still waiting on Gerard Parker from West Virginia, his hire to become official. I think it's just those two that have been reported but not confirmed. And then the defensive coordinator hire. I mean, I'm pretty sure I said in our live show last week at Tim Hyde, I was like, man, if we're sitting here next Tuesday or Wednesday, which now we are, and there's still no defensive coordinator news, you would have to think it's Al Golden. I mean, what else? I mean, that was the very first opening that came about when Marcus Freeman became the new head coach at Notre Dame. Even if they kept all of the assistant coaches from Alexander to Quinn, all those guys, DC is the one thing that you knew right away you had to fill, and here we are. Al Golden. That's what we're waiting on, Tyler.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I mean, it's the most important hire that Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame has to make. So I guess it makes sense that it's dragged out this long. If Al Golden is the guy, if Marcus Freeman says, I want Al Golden, I'm going to wait for Al Golden. That's why we're sitting here and we still haven't, heard who Notre Dame's defensive coordinator is going to be. But the first thing I was thinking, though, is with all this success that the Bengals are having, if you're Al Golden, why would you want to leave that? But we just talked about McCullough winning a Super Bowl with the Chiefs. He was fine with going back to college football immediately after that. So it's interesting what these guys have as personal motives, but I mean, the defensive coordinator job at Notre Dame, that's a really good job. And Marcus Freeman had it for 1 year, and now he's the head coach. So it's more than just a stepping stone. It's pretty much a destination job. And it wouldn't surprise me if Golden goes from potentially winning a Super Bowl, which he could do this weekend, to being the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame.
Yeah, that wouldn't be too bad. Yeah, not a bad week. Um, George Takacs was going to be going into his fifth year at Notre Dame, tight end. Entered the transfer portal on Monday. Now, we had been hearing at blueandgold.com after the season had completed that Takacs was someone who was going to stick around. And he was someone who was like, it wouldn't be a surprise at all to see him enter the portal. Then we hear he stays, and then he enters the transfer portal. So I'm sure you agree with me, Tyler, in that him entering the portal's not a surprise, but maybe the path for him to get there was maybe a little surprising.
Yeah, it took a little bit of time, obviously, because we saw right after that Fiesta Bowl, there was a flurry of guys either entering the portal or saying, I'm going to stay. He was one of the guys that went the latter direction. And then I don't know. Here we are, 4 or 5 weeks later, and these players, these coaches, they have changes of hearts. I mean, look at all of these unusual circumstances going around the country, not just with players, but like I said, with coaches too. So he might have thought about it a little bit more, and maybe he looked at some of his numbers. He played 400 snaps and only had 3 catches. He's got to be thinking, I can go somewhere else, play 200 snaps, but he's probably going to go somewhere where he's going to want to play like 500 or 600 snaps like Michael Mayer and have I don't know, dozens of catches. And look, I think this is more about Michael Mayer than it is about George Takacs. Takacs is a really good college tight end, but Michael Mayer is one of the best in the country. And when you have a guy who gets 95 targets and 71 catches, program records for Notre Dame, it's kind of hard to say this is where I'm going to carve out a niche if you're George Takacs.
See, I think George, if he would have stayed at Notre Dame this year, I still think he has a path to the NFL, just like Brock Wright. Never a featured guy in Notre Dame's offense. He's catching more balls in his rookie season than he did at Notre Dame. Got a touchdown this season. Um, but you understand. I think we can understand, again, George Takacs and why he would want to go. Guys, still got that deal going on at blueandgold.com. $1 for your first year of premium access. And please hit that thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel if you're not yet. Blueandgold.com, your home of everything Notre Dame athletics. Tyler's covering football, women's basketball, and hockey for us.
And
Luckily for me,
baseball. Don't
and
forget about baseball.
baseball. Yeah, after we record this, you told me you were going to baseball availability. So Tyler breaking a record for amount of sports one person can cover. And Tyler's boots on the ground South Bend. So is Patrick Engel. We also recently hired Ashton Pollard, who is going to be a key person for us on our YouTube channel. You guys are going to get to know her and love her. She is a superstar, and she's moving to South Bend soon. So we will have more boots on the ground in South Bend than any other Notre Dame website or publication, at least to my knowledge. So that's going to be awesome. Speaking of boots on the ground, Tyler, you and Patrick got to speak to 10, I think it was 10 of the 12. I think a couple had class or something. They missed media availability. But you got to meet all these kids that, in my end, covering football recruiting, I got to talk to. I kind of passed them along to you guys. What did you think of meeting all these Notre Dame true freshmen, the early enrollees?
Well, first of all, just shout out to Notre Dame for doing this because we've been covering college football a long time. I know I'm young, but this isn't my first rodeo in covering a signing class. And I don't think I've ever had a situation where I've gotten to talk to what was supposed to be every single early enrollee. And for only two of them to miss that because of class, I'll take 10 early enrollees every time. And yeah, just the personalities. You knew this, Mike, like you said, because you've known these guys for some of them over a year, maybe some of them a couple years. They're just really awesome personalities, and I think that's different about Notre Dame too. Is that some of these guys get on campus and it's like, man, they've been on campus for 2 years, but really they've only been on campus for 2 weeks. Just talking like Billy Strouth. Some of his one liners and his quotes were just so entertaining. He seems like he's a guy that can't wait to get on the field. Look, this is a guy who had foot surgery like a month ago, and he says he's in the weight room doing one-legged squats because he doesn't want to miss out on activities with his teammates. And I think we asked him too, what position can you see yourself playing here? Are you a tackle? Are you a guard? And he's like, I don't care where I play. I just want to hit people. So that was probably one of the more memorable quotes. Jalen Sneed saying that he's already the fastest linebacker on the team. I can't wait for spring football to see if that's true. He carried himself really well in that media availability. And then a guy like Steve Angeli, I learned so much about him and all his connections to Notre Dame. And I wrote the story for blueandgold.com last week. It was almost like he was destined to be a quarterback at Notre Dame with some of those ties. So go read that if you haven't. But just really cool personalities, really cool players. And I can't wait to cover these guys for their entire career.
Tyler, I sent that article that you wrote to the Angeli family, and they loved it. They thought that I wrote it, so I took the praise for that, and I didn't correct them
Well,
on that.
we're a team.
So yeah, same team, same team. So yeah,
Same thing.
really exciting stuff coming up at blueandgold.com. Spring practice, we will have excellent written coverage at blueandgold.com, as well as all the video coverage, just like we did last fall and spring camp. Covered that on our YouTube channel here. So make sure you hit the thumbs up, lock into blueandgold.com. Our website is the fastest growing Notre Dame publication on the internet, and it's not slowing down anytime soon. Dollar for 1 year of premium access. Get that deal while it lasts. Appreciate you guys watching, and we will catch you next time.